Welcome to episode 5 of the 25 Mile Drive. I am Jake Wilkins, and thank you for joining me on my way home. If you'll notice behind me, I can see them in the rearview mirror. There looks to be a bunch of wood in the back of my truck. If you made that observation, you are in fact correct. I am currently carrying, I think, 7 trusses, which are the structures that you use to build a roof. Another builder had some extras that they decided to push into our trash box on our job site. So I said, you know what? I have a chicken coop I need to build, and I have a shed that I need to rebuild. So I'm going to take these trusses and build 2 buildings with them. So that's what's in the back of my truck, and I'm really hoping that I don't lose them and cause a serious car accident on the road. However, that is not what I wanted to talk to you about today. What I want to talk about today is deviations. Why we depart from the truth. When we know something to be true, we know something to be absolutely true. Why do we depart from it? That's what I want to talk about today. So I think I've said it before, but I am LDS and I served a mission. So for 2 years, I left the country and I was in Italy. And it was a great time. But while I was there, probably about the middle of my time there, so I'd probably been there about a year, this guy came to visit our mission, and he was from like the mission, he was like the missionary service leader of our entire church, of our entire organization. So he came to teach us some stuff, to talk to us. So we had this meeting for about 2 hours, and for a large portion of that, he was the one that was talking to us. And he shared this example that I will never, ever forget, because it was just powerful. So before I tell the story, to give you some context, missionaries have a very, very strict lifestyle. People in the LDS church already do have a very, compared to what most people do, we have a very strict lifestyle. Like, in general, we don't smoke, we don't drink, we don't have sex before marriage. There's just like this long list of things that we as a church are very highly encouraged not to do, that the world at large does, right? So being a missionary, though, you have even more rules, if you want to call them rules. So in addition to all the other things that a normal LDS person does, we also have what's called, we called it the White Bible. It was this little tiny white, this big, that would fit in your pocket, and it was a rule book, and we called it the White Bible. And we carried it with us everywhere because it was the missionary rules. And so, for example, just to give you some of those rules, you are to always be with your companion. Like, never, ever leave sight of your companion unless they're like in the bathroom or something. So you're always together, right? You and your companion, the partner that you've been assigned to do missionary work with. Another one is, so I mentioned earlier that like the LDS church, we teach not to have sex before marriage. Well, while you're on your mission, you don't even date. You're not even allowed to do anything but besides shake the hand of someone of the opposite sex. That's it, right? So no dating, no kissing, no holding hands, no anything, for 2 years. And then there were some things as far as missionary work goes. So those are a couple of the rules. But then, other than that, there were some other things, principles and guidelines and things that we were supposed to do as missionaries to, quote unquote, be successful in our missionary work, which just meant talk to the largest amount of people. So some of those things would be like, you're supposed to talk to X amount of people per day, right? Or whatever it was. We had all these things that were, essentially supposed to guarantee our success if we obeyed them. If we obeyed the White Bible, if we obeyed all of the other rules, then we would have served a successful mission if we did our best to obey all those rules. And so when I say success, how do you measure success as a missionary? Well, it just means that you help the largest amount of people. So we believe that if you are following the rules to the best of your ability, and you're doing your very best, it doesn't mean you're perfect. So sometimes you're going to slip up, But if you're doing your best to obey the rules, to do everything you can to obey the rules, then you will feel good about your missionary service, and you'll be able to help the most people, because it gets you in front of the most people, and you're able to share our message, which we believe helps people, and provide service for people, you know, like physically helping them if they need it. So we just believe that doing what the rule books say puts us in the best situation to succeed as a missionary and to feel good about our missionary service. So that's kind of the context of being a missionary, right? Some of it. That's obviously a very brief explanation of what we do for 2 years, but that's the gist. But that at least gives you some context for the story that I'm going to share with you, which is this. So that guy came. I can't remember his name, but he came. He had this really interesting speaking style, which got all of our attention. It got us all sitting. I remember it got everybody like sitting up straight and taking notes. I can't remember exactly what he asked us to do or whatever, but I do remember that all of us were extremely attentive and we were all taking notes. We didn't want to miss a single word that he was, you know, gonna say, which is probably part of the reason why I remember so well what he talked about. But he started talking about aircraft carriers. He said in his travels, you know, he travels the world visiting missions all over the world, wherever we have missionaries. And he said that one time in an airport, while he was waiting for an airplane, he sat next to somebody getting food or whatever, and it turned out that person was or had been a pilot that landed, you know, that was based on an aircraft carrier. And so they had this really long conversation about the ins and outs of landing an airplane on an aircraft carrier. And so he had this full presentation about, I mean, so he had this conversation with the guy, and then, you know, in his travels, and then for the rest of that trip, he was doing all this research about, you know, the intricacies of landing an airplane on an aircraft carrier. And I don't remember every little detail, but it was so complex. Like there were so many things that could go wrong. And the only way to guarantee survival, like to guarantee that you took off successfully and that you landed successfully, was that you obeyed every single rule, every single thing. Like you had to watch every little tiny gauge. You just had to obey every single rule. The margin for error was so large that you just had to do exactly what you had to do it exactly right according to the rules, according to the book, or you failed. And failure meant death. That meant you died, right? So you know, like we're literally talking about a life or death situation here, where if you deviate from what you know to be true, you know, a proven method, then you will die, right? So he's telling us all this stuff. So I don't remember all this stuff, but just to give you a few things, and I encourage you to look up on your own and see, you know, look into how they land on an aircraft carrier, if for no other reason than it's extremely interesting, and it's very impressive that these guys can pull it off. But if you're at all familiar with aircraft carriers, you know that the airplanes have a very short distance to take off. A normal airplane, like if you've flown on a regular just jet, the runway is super long, so they have all this time to get speed and be able to take off. But on an aircraft carrier, it's super short, so they have to go from 0 to whatever speed in a very short distance, and they have to pull up at just the right time. They have to, you know, do all these things just right. And if they don't do it just right, if they don't accelerate enough, if they don't pull up at the right time, if they don't do one of 100 things, they nosedive off the end of the ship and into the ocean they go, and hopefully they can be saved. So that's how they take off. When they landing is the extra tricky part. So I didn't know any of this before this guy was telling it to us, but it's super interesting. So when those airplanes, you know, they do their circles above the aircraft carrier, and then when they get the green light to come in to land, they have this little hook that hangs down on the bottom of their airplane, and the aircraft carrier has two like cables essentially that string across the landing runway. And so what they have to do is the pilot essentially has to hook onto one of those two cables. So hopefully you understand how difficult that is with the hook and the cables, that they have to, you know, going however fast they're going, they have to magically make this hook land on the cable so that it stops their airplane and they don't fall off the edge of the boat. In case you're not convinced, here is another detail. They have to be going just the right speed. like exactly the right speed. And I don't know what that is. So here's the thing, if they miss the hooks, they have to really quickly punch their accelerate, you know, they have to really quickly accelerate and take off again. There's no room for correction there. Like, there's no room for them to just slow down on their own on the remaining space on the aircraft carrier. So if they come in going too slow, thinking that they're gonna like take a little extra time to try to hook the cables, if they're going too slow when they come in, they won't have enough time to accelerate to take off again, which means they nosedive off the edge of the boat into the ocean. And it's happened before too, that they're going too fast when they come in, and the hook system, you know, breaks, and you know, they crash the airplane that way. And so there are just so many ways that it can go wrong to land on an aircraft carrier, to take off and land on an aircraft carrier. That told us that in their conversation, he also asked the pilot, he said, well, have you ever had to land at night? And what's that like? And he said that is the scariest thing he's ever done. And he had to do it all the time, and it never ever got easier. It never got less scary, less terrifying. He said every single time it was like he was doing it again for the first time, because you're going in blind. So if you can imagine landing an airplane on an aircraft carrier in daylight, and you still have all those things, right? You have to hook the cables. If you're going too slow, you have to, or if you miss the cables, you have to punch it and accelerate and take off again and do your loops and come back again and try again. If you're going, you know, if you mess up the takeoff, then you go into the ocean. But it's light outside, right? You have that going for you, that you can see things. But at night, and actually I have to make a correction. So nighttime there are lights, right? So you can still see, and the moon, he said, sometimes was actually so bright that it felt like it was light outside. So it wasn't that bad. So nighttime was more difficult, but not the worst. He said the worst, and the thing that, sorry, I do have to make this correction. He said the worst, and the thing that he, you know, felt like the first time every time, that was terrifying every time, was so scary, was when it was cloudy and dark. Because then he had to do everything with instruments, which means he was completely blind, and he had to just rely on his gauges, right? His instruments in his airplane to know how high he was, how fast he was going, where he was in relation to the aircraft carrier, which side of the aircraft carrier he was on, you know. It could happen where he came in on the wrong side, right? He could come and try to hit the aircraft carrier perpendicular and screw up that way. Or he could come in from the front or the other side, or from any other direction other than straight on towards the rail, towards the landing where the cables were. So if you can imagine an already nearly impossible task, which is taking off and landing from an aircraft carrier, now try in the daylight. Now imagine doing that nearly impossible thing in the dark, when in the middle of clouds. So you can literally see nothing, and you have to rely on your instruments. And the only way to guarantee success is by doing exactly what you know to be true, which is every instrument has to be just right. Everything has to be right. So he told us this story, and you know, we couldn't really tell where he was going with it. It was just really cool that he was telling us this story about aircraft carriers. You know, I didn't know how they worked, so it was really interesting to me. But he reeled it back in, and he said, a pilot, you know, an aircraft carrier, a pilot in the Navy that lands on an aircraft carrier has zero margin for error. They just don't. Any mistake that they make means they die, and other people die. If they do it really badly and, you know, crash into the aircraft carrier or something, they could kill other people and take them with them. And also those airplanes, you know, there's no price on the value of a life, but say they live, but they crash an aircraft. Say they crash an airplane, it gets destroyed or sinks to the bottom of the ocean, but they live. They just sunk, you know, tens of millions of dollars in an airplane that is now gone forever, right? So his point was, there is a guaranteed way of success for these pilots. They have to do it exactly by the book, or they die. They know that they will succeed. They know that they will live. They know that their mission, they know that they can take off and land 100% of the time if they follow the book 100% of the time, right? If they don't deviate. And then he brought it home, and he said, you missionaries have a book that guarantees success. You have, the handbook, the white Bible, and you have we have another book that we use. It's called Preach My Gospel, and it's a big, thick, how to be a missionary, essentially. He said you have that. You have all these resources for how to be a missionary. And he said, why do you deviate? You know what works. You know what's right. You know what's true. You know what the facts are. Why do you deviate? You know what will guarantee your success. You know what will make you feel good about your service. You know what's right. You know what's true. Why do you deviate? And I don't think there was a single person in that room that didn't shake to the very core. It just makes you, why? Why? It's such a powerful question. Why do we deviate from the truth? Why do we deviate from what we know is right? Why do we deviate from a proven successful formula? Why do we depart from that which we know to be true, from the facts? Why do we do it? I'm not saying this because I have an answer. It's been 6 years since that guy talked to us, and I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know why humans, obviously myself included, I don't know why we depart from the truth. I just don't. I can't figure it out. And I think that there are those who do figure it out, and they are the happiest, most successful people on earth. They're the ones that have figured out how to act on truth instead of depart from it. And there's something very recently that happened in my life when I departed from the truth. So I used to be extremely fit, and I used to eat really well. I just really took care of my body, and I felt invincible. I could outdo anybody. That's what I felt. I couldn't really, but that's what I felt like. I just felt invincible. And then I got surgery on my wrist, and some other things happened, and I let those things be excuses, and I just let go. So it's not like I gained a ton of weight. I just got very out of shape, and I ate terribly. And I went to a business conference at the beginning of this year, and this guy named Naveen Jain spoke, and I'd never heard of him before. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he was all about, but it turns out that he is this very, very intelligent man who runs several companies and who solves really big problems. And so one of the companies, and so one thing that he does, for example, he started a company called Moon Express, I believe. And his whole thing is that he wants to go to the moon again, and he's actually sending his first ship there. It's unmanned, but he's sending his first ship there this year, I think. And his whole thing is that he wants to mine the moon for precious resources, precious minerals and stuff, and wants to essentially colonize the moon. And he's doing that. He's starting that this year. He's sending his first ship there this year, which is amazing. And so the one of the problems that he's trying to solve is our energy issue, and he thinks that there are minerals on the moon, enough of them that we could have renewable energy endlessly if we mined what is on the moon. So that's why he wants to go there. He's trying to solve that problem. Another problem that he is trying to solve is the global health crisis. Just that our health is so poor, based on just that mankind's health is just bad, So he started this company called Viome. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. If you haven't, go to Viome.com. It's Viome.com. It's incredible. So I don't know how he worked this out, just through his connections through Moon Express or whatever. I don't know how he worked this out, but he got so the United States, the Department of Defense or whatever, had this facility in Los Alamos where they were studying the effects of biological warfare. And so they developed this way to test the human gut, and on this level that no other test on Earth is capable of. And so what that means is, and so for some reason they gave him the permit, they gave him the lab. They said, it's yours, all the rights are yours, for you and your team, do with it what you will, whatever. So now he has this lab with his proprietary technology that's more detailed and more advanced than anywhere else on Earth. And the reason that this is so important is because some of the biggest advances in human health are that the gut has everything to do with health, with the health of your body. So their mantra, like their motto or whatever, is something like making chronic diseases and illnesses optional, or a choice, or whatever. So long story short, and I'm no expert on this, but what they found is that the bacteria in your gut are largely what influence your health, your general well-being. And when we eat the wrong foods, it causes inflammation in our gut. And if our gut is inflamed over long periods of time, it leads to chronic illnesses, chronic diseases. And so all these terrible things that people are living with are 100% preventable if we just feed the bacteria in our gut the right stuff. So they're able to do this test where essentially all you do is send in a stool sample, and they're able to test the bacteria in your gut on a level that is so advanced and so deep that they can then give you exactly what foods you should be eating and not eating. For example, they're always coming out, like it seems like every day somebody comes out with this is the new diet that will change everyone's life if they do it, whatever. And the thing is, sometimes those diets work for a select few people, but sometimes they don't. So what they found is that humans are roughly 95% the same as far as our DNA goes, right? So all the variation in what humans look like and whatever, everything that has to do with DNA is only in the 5% of DNA that we're different. But what they found about our bacteria is that humans are 95% different. So me and you are 95% different as far as our bacteria DNA goes. And what that means is that our diets, how we're nourishing our bacteria need to be drastically different. Between me and you, they just have to be so different because our bacteria are so different. They need different food. So they're always coming out with these crazy fad diets, whatever, that guarantee success, that guarantee weight loss, whatever. But if we're so different, then there's no such thing as a blanket diet. It's a lie, it's a myth. We're so different that we each need a catered diet to our own personal bacteria. I know that sounds weird, but that's how it is. And if you want to learn more, go to Viome.com, Viome.com. But anyway, I wanted to get things back on track, and so I paid for the test. So they sent me the test, I sent in a stool sample, and they gave me my results. And it was very eye-opening, and I have a video about it. So if you go to my YouTube channel and you go to the video that's called My Viome Results, you can see me explain what my results were. But basically, it was nothing like what I thought it would be. So it turns out that my 5 superfoods are parsley, garlic, cauliflower, coconut oil, and summer squash. Not all these crazy expensive superfoods that are discovered every day, or whatever. They're these 5 extremely common foods that everybody eats, but those are the ones I need to be eating all the time. And I will tell you that when I do eat them, when I do follow my results from Viome, it feels like I'm ingesting rocket fuel. Like, I feel night and day different. My gut feels better. I don't feel, I just feel amazing. I feel absolutely incredible when I'm eating the foods based on the results of my Viome test. That lasted for about 2 weeks, maybe less. Probably less than 2 weeks that I was like serious about following those results. And I departed from what I knew to be true. And I paid for it too. Like, this isn't something that I just learned or like Googled or whatever. I actually went out of my way to pay, and it was $400. I paid $400 for this test. It told me what was in my body. It wasn't like a guess. It wasn't like well, this food is good. This was a test that found every kind of bacteria in my gut. And then they gave me a list of foods that I should eat and that I should avoid based on the bacteria that are in my gut. That was science. Those were facts. That was true. And I departed from it. And I drastically departed from it. So the last 3 weeks, I went off bad. and I drank more soda than I think I've ever had in my entire life. I ate the worst food. I mean, I went off, and consequently, I felt so terrible the last 3 weeks. And I'm still feeling, and so I'm about 3 days into starting over and doing better, and I feel like crap because I haven't had caffeine and I haven't had sugar. I haven't had a lot of sugar in 3 days. So my body's still recovering from that. But usually after about a week of being off, I get back and I feel fine again. But I just can't figure it out. I can't figure out why I departed from something that I knew to be true, something I paid for, something I went out of my way to do. Science proved it. I knew that they were facts. I knew it was true, and I departed from it. I can't figure it out. And I don't know if it's like a motivation thing, like, a pilot in the Navy that has to land and take off and land on an aircraft carrier. His motivation is his life, right? He doesn't want to die, and he doesn't want to kill anyone else. So that's why he's going to land. That's why he's going to follow everything that he knows to be true to make sure that he lands the airplane safely. So that pilot's motivation is pretty top tier, I would say. I don't think there are very many other things that would motivate someone more than their life, to do something right and to not deviate. But and so I guess that's part of the solution, is that I need to I don't know. I need to motivate myself better, and probably I need to make more specific, clear goals about, and about where I will get if I don't deviate, if I do and follow what I know to be true. And probably I need to have a clearer vision of what my future looks like based on, compound interest earned over time by obeying things that I know to be true. I don't know. I think that's part of it. That's probably not the whole thing, but all I know is that I'm sick of it. I'm sick of departing and deviating from what I know to be true, and I'm sure that you are too. It's a human weakness. And if you're anything like me, then you probably want to stop falling short of that and to do what you know to be true. And so I guess that's my invitation to you, is to analyze your life and see which areas you have departed from the truth in, where you're deviating, and to identify the consequences of that deviation, and to find some personal remedies for it. Find some motivation. Clarify your goals. Clarify your vision. Really analyze where you will be 10 years from now, based on a habit of either departing from your truth or living according to your truth. I know that I personally want to do that because I know that it leads to success and happiness. And so I hope that you'll do the same. Analyze your life and figure out where you're deviating and stop deviating, because we can be successful and we can be happy if we stop deviating from the truth. Well, that wraps up episode 5 of the 25-mile drive. If you like what you heard, please like it, share it, subscribe, and get the word out that I'm sharing some good stuff. I'm Jake Wilkins. I'll see you next week.